As some of you know, I just moved back to the area. And, and while I was away, I was living up in Mendocino, up in Fort Bragg, and I was looking for a spiritual community there. And I found the Quakers. And the Quakers can sit for a long time in stillness. They sure can. Well, one of my favorite ministers, he always starts with a joke, so I'm going to try. All right, so there was a woman, and she was in the hospital, and she had suffered a pretty bad heart attack. And so while she was there, she prayed, and she asked God, God, am I going to survive this? And God said, yeah, you've got another 40 years. So while she was in the hospital, she got a facelift, had a nose job, and a tummy tuck. And when she was leaving the hospital, as she was crossing the street, she got hit by a car and died. I know, right? And so when she arrived to heaven, she asked God, what happened? I thought I had 40 years. And God says, I'm so sorry, I didn't recognize you. All right, it landed. Okay, all right, so the name of my talk today, I tell you what, that changes, right, as you prepare. That was an interesting process, but lily pads of faith. And I think if I could make one last edit, I would say lily pads towards faith. And so I picked up a few of the books in the back that Twyla put. There's still a lot of books. You want to get a book. But one of them was Anne Lamott. I love Anne Lamott. And so I was reading it the other night, and I was like, oh, I love this. So this is from her Traveling Mercies, Some Thoughts on Faith. She says, my coming to faith did not start with a leap, but rather a series of staggers from what seemed like one safe place to another, like lily pads, round and green. These places summoned and then held me up while I grew. Each prepared me for the next leaf on which I would land. And in this way, I moved across the swamp of doubt and fear. When I look back at some of these early resting places, the boisterous home of the Catholics, the soft armchair of the Christian Science mom, adoption by the ardent Jews, I can see how flimsy and indirect a path they made. Yet each step brought me closer to the verdant pad of faith on which I somehow stand afloat today. And that just touched me. So, first of all, I just want to honor the wisdom in this room today. I am so blessed to be surrounded by this community. I wanted to share a little bit about me. I love story, and I love hearing other people's stories. And so I wanted to share a little bit about how I arrived to Unity. So some of you may know, I was brought up in a very conservative home. I was raised here. My grandparents were missionaries. They were Southern Baptists. Yes. And my grandfather was a minister. My grandmother was a pianist, a vocalist, percussionist. She loved to play the drums. And a side note, she could play the drums at the dance, but she couldn't dance. The irony. And so my parents actually met in Ecuador, basically down on the mission field down there. So my mom is what we call an MK. You know that? Missionary kid, right? Yeah. So, it doesn't get much more evangelical than that. That's the home I was brought up in. I have a lot of really positive, good, early memories of growing up in the church. Some of the ones that stand out to me are the sense of community that I've had growing up in a church setting, and also the creative side of it. My mom always wanted to go to the church that had the best music. That was her thing. And so I got to be a part of that growing up, the creative side of it. I got to sing. We had a Sunday school program where we did puppets. My puppet's name was Gertrude. I just remembered that this morning. It just came to me, and I was like, I was Gertrude. So I have a lot of positive memories, right? But the ones that really stand out to me, I have a lot of memories of coming in on Sunday morning and feeling guilt and shame, right? Like I had done something wrong during the week. That I had to come in and ask forgiveness and say I was sorry for all the things that I did during the week. And it was those feelings of guilt and shame. And so when I graduated high school, I decided to go to Baylor University. And for those of you that don't know, it's a private Baptist university in Texas, Waco. And I went there wanting to learn more about my religion, Christianity, to dig deeper into that. And I thought I was going to find a husband, and he was going to be a minister, and we were going to have a lot of kids, right? And we were going to live happily ever after. That was the story that I told myself. And, well, little did I know, right? God had other plans. Can you relate to that? Yeah. And I realized that I was gay. And it wasn't anything I saw coming by any means, right? Because of the home I grew up in, I didn't know. And it fell on me like a ton of bricks. And, that process of coming out was not an easy one, to say the least, right? It was hard. It was hard. It was hard for my family. We've all since worked through that, I guess, the best we can. But, my minister at the time, he told me, this is sin, this is wrong, you're going to hell. And they gave me two options. They said, option one, you can fix this. You can pray this away, You can get conversion therapy. That was even given to me. At the very least, see a Christian therapist. All right, so that was option one. Fix it. Or option two, I could be celibate for the rest of my life. I could be alone. That was the other option. And that wasn't going to work for me. You know, as someone who values relationship, that was not going to work for me. And so I talk about it like this. I basically went into exile. You know, there was a period of time where I didn't talk to family. I had to sort it out. But the biggest thing that happened at that time was I was told that the God that I grew up with, that I believed in, didn't love me the way I was, right? That I needed to fix it, that I needed to change it or hide it. And, you know, looking back in hindsight, I knew I didn't believe in that God, right? So I left the church and had a little bit of a destructive path along the way. You can imagine that kind of trauma. But I found some lily pads along the way, right? My girlfriend at the time was a part of the Jewish community here in Merced, and they welcomed me with open arms. So I found a safe place in the Jewish community in those early years. And then my first wife, and some of you might know her, she is the one that brought me to Unity. And that was around 2005, 2006. And I tell you what, it was like a coming home. Walking into a space that told me, you are God's perfect child. God and I love you just the way you are. What a gift we have here. What a gift. So Unity has become a big lily pad, so to speak. The Methodist Church here in Merced, another lily pad for me. You know, they went through the process, I think it was in 2008. It took a couple of years, but they went through the process of becoming a reconciling congregation, right? And if you don't know what that means, just go look. They have a big rainbow out. You're welcome here. And so I, started the process of having to reconcile my identity and my relationship with God. And so I want to visit Myrtle a little bit. And so Myrtle talks about her spiritual awakening. And she talks about it in, how to let God help you, right? And she's describing the experience of going to the lecture by E.B. Weeks. E.B. Weeks was part of the metaphysical college, right, that Emma Curtis Hopkins had started at the time. And he was touring. And Charles and Myrtle went to this lecture, which they called Truth Class. It was Truth Class. So here's what she says about it. It was many years ago that the truth of being was first brought to my notice. There seemed to be urgent need of relief if my stay on this planet was to be prolonged. It was at the solicitation of friends already interested that my husband and I attended the first truth class taught in the city. I must have been fully ready for the initial lesson, for it filled and satisfied all the empty, hungry longings of my soul and heart. Human language cannot express the vastness of possibilities I saw unrolled before me, my possibilities. While the routine of life went on much the same, a new world opened to me, within me. The physical claims that had been considered so serious faded away before the dawning of this new consciousness, and I found that my body temple had literally transformed through the renewing of my mind. So she talks about her spiritual awakening, the shift in consciousness that she experienced. And if you know her story, it was a physical thing, right? A physical sickness. And she had this shift in consciousness where she realized, I am a child of God. And so, not for all of us, it's not that boom, boom, right? We have these lily pads. And so, around the same time that I came to Unity, I landed at this garage sale. And I was going through some cassettes, and look at the cassette I found. I mean, you couldn't have designed a better cover for me, right? Yeah. So Louise Hay, Louise Hay is the first New Thought practitioner that really changed my life in so many ways. And if you don't know her work is about, it's a lot of things, but self-love, healing that inner child, letting go of old resentments, stepping into our power, our love. And she does what she calls mirror work, right? You look in the mirror and I love you. How many of you can do that, right? I love you, Leslie. And so I started doing, I listened to that tape until it broke. And so if I have a moment that I can, right, like Myrtle did, I'll never forget this moment. I was at my parents' house, I was looking in the mirror, and I was heavy. I was so heavy, with this God, and it was like Spirit filled the room and said, Leslie, you are a child of God. God loves you just the way you are. You can be gay and have a relationship with me. And that was a huge shift for me, right? Knowing that I didn't need to change, right? And so in Unity, we talk about changing our thoughts, right? And I'm low on time, so I'm going to blaze through these, but they show up in all kinds of ways. That first one is from Buddha, right? The mind is everything. What you think, you become. And from Proverbs, as he thinketh within himself, so is he. Myrtle talks about this as right thinking, right, error thought, the law of mind action. Course in Miracles talks about it. A miracle is our shift in perspective. And so this is a pretty common thing that you hear in Unity. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Right? And so I had to shift those thoughts in order to, right, be standing before you today, I'll say that. Yeah. And that last one is Ernest Holmes. Change your thinking, change your life. So we hear these all around us. And so this was the shift that I had to make. Now that which you receive from the mind of God is always good, always helpful, health-inspiring, and peace-inspiring. That which you receive from the reports of your senses or the minds of others may be true and helpful, or it may be false and harmful. The study and practice of truth will help you discriminate between the false and the true. And that's what we're doing here, right? They call, Unity students, we're truth students. We're seekers of truth, right? With a capital T. And you know when you find that truth, right? That moment that I looked in the mirror. It just lands, right? So I just asked, what are some of your lily pads? What brought you here? What are your safe places that have held you along the way? And I encourage you to share that with other people. Share those stories. They're important. They need to be told. So I will end with this. Thanks for hanging in with me. Some of the most significant lily pads in my life have been people. And some of you are in the room today. And so I went back to Anne Lamott's Stitches, which I love if you haven't read it. She says, "What saved me was that I found gentle, loyal, and hilarious companions, which is at the heart of meaning. Maybe we don't find a lot of answers to life's tougher questions, but if we find a few true friends, that's even better. They help you see who you truly are, which is not always the loveliest possible version of yourself. But then comes the greatest miracle of all. They still love you. They keep you company as perhaps you become less of a whiny baby if you accept their help. Those people in our lives that love us even when we can't love ourselves, right? That's it. That's all I got.